Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Connecticut Summerfest Evening of Web Premieres. My name is Gala Flagello, and I'm the Festival Director and co-founder of Connecticut Summerfest.
And my name is Aaron Price. I'm the Artistic Director and co-founder of Connecticut Summerfest.
Connecticut Summerfest brings together talented emerging composers with some of the country's most inventive chamber music ensembles. We are thrilled to have you joining us for our first ever virtual evening of premieres. This evening, all pieces you'll see premiered are written by our 8 festival composers who are our festival composition students at Connecticut Summerfest. We're also thrilled to have been working with the International Contemporary Ensemble this year, who was our ensemble in residence and premiered all the works you'll be hearing this evening.
This virtual event will include mini interviews with each composer, a chat with the directors and Ross Karre, the co-artistic director and percussionist of the International Contemporary Ensemble, and of course, the premieres of these new pieces. Our concert will close with a Zoom lobby where viewers can ask the composers questions about their music and talk with the director and performers. You can also follow along with a PDF of our program booklet, which is available in the description of this video on YouTube or the Facebook event page description.
Our concert series is free to view this year and every year, so please consider making a contribution by visiting our website, ctsummerfest.org.
Over the course of tonight's events, a chat function is available on both Facebook and YouTube if you'd like to share your thoughts and comments. To use the chat function on either platform, you will need to be logged into your YouTube or Facebook account respectively. We invite you to use either chat at any time during the stream.
Up first, we're excited to be premiering a work by festival composer Katie Hedrick. Katie's work is titled Compact Spaces and was performed by a string trio from the International Contemporary Ensemble, our 2020 ensemble in residence. You may have heard the string trio at our concert this past Tuesday evening, which was the beginning of our concert series online this year. Katie was unable to be with us this evening, so she provided us with a video introduction for her piece, where she'll be describing a little bit about the piece and how it came to be, and also talking a little bit about her experiences at Connecticut Summerfest 2020. Thanks so much for joining us again, and now over to Katie.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Hedrick, and I'm a composer from Wheeling, West Virginia. Right now, I am living in Morgantown, West Virginia, and I go to West Virginia University. There, I'm studying music composition and a minor in world music. I also play the viola with them, and I am the president of the SCI student chapter at WVU. You're going to hear a piece that I wrote called Compact Spaces, which is for violin, viola, and cello. The title of the piece comes from 2 different things. First, it comes from the atmosphere at the time when I was writing the piece, which was going back home and moving back to Wheeling to do a music degree in my dining room, which I felt very constricted and stressed and anxious being a student in the new quarantine. And the second thing it comes from is the basis of the piece, which is the intervals I use. The first is a landscaping open interval with the perfect fifth and a crunchy minor second. You'll notice as the piece goes on that these intervals get added to with other notes and the texture thickens and goes along with the rhythmic structure of the piece. It gets a little more complicated and a little more heightened anxiety. The addition of different tempos also adds to this stress ball that builds on itself. At the climactic moment, you'll hear as everything starts locking together and the instrumentalists are playing wildly in different registers to really show this ball of anxiety building and coming to an end. You can listen at the end of the piece for how it mirrors the beginning. I chose to do that because I wanted to return to a familiar sound and change the notes a little bit to sound a little less dissonant. I thought that this communicated the feeling of adapting to a sense of normalcy, a new normal, and figuring out how to navigate a challenging time like this. And I wanted to communicate that to the end, coming off of this stress and into adapting to the new normal. I wrote this piece specifically for the Connecticut Summerfest, and I am really glad and honored that I got to come and participate in this festival. I got a lot of useful insight through the lectures that they chose to give, like the engraving lecture and the finances lecture, on things that I need to be thinking about now as a young musician. I really valued the private lesson time I got because the teachers were really personable and wanted to hear about my goals and my future and talk to me about those sorts of things. and all gave me really unique advice on how I can make the pieces I was showing them my own. And the people at the festival that I met were really inspiring to me because we all came from different walks of life and we had different resources around us that made for a lot of different styles and a lot of different interests, and hearing about their music was really interesting and inspiring to me. So shout out to Gala and Aaron for an awesome festival, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Congratulations, Katie, on Compact Spaces. Definitely a very topical and relevant piece, given the times that we're all experiencing in this climate. Next up, we have festival composer Andrew Faulkenberry. Welcome, Andrew.
Hello, thank you.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from New Brunswick, New Jersey right now, in central Jersey.
Excellent. What's going on out there?
Not much. I'm just starting my first couple of weeks of school.
Excellent. Congratulations. So tell us a little bit about your piece.
Yeah, so the inspiration for this piece was a relatively simple observation that every piece of music, basically, regardless of the genre or whatever it is, begins and ends the same way, that is, in silence. So, and at first this seems like kind of a pretty mundane thing to notice, but to me, it kind of, when I started to think about it more, it kind of reminded me of the sort of impermanence of everything that we do as musicians, that no matter what we do, there's this sort of, any sort of sound that we decide to create will be just a temporary interruption of that prevailing silence. And the image that kind of came to my mind was like the image of like a really still, placid lake representing the silence, and then we as musicians are just like kind of casting little stones into it, and then it like the we create little waves, and then they sort of die down, and the sort of the silence reasserts itself. So that's kind of that was the genesis of the title of the piece. And so what I tried to do within the music itself was kind of have these gestures that mimic the shape of the wave, and the entire shape of the piece is kind of in a wave form, essentially, where it starts with very soft, emerging from nothing, kind of builds to this more broad thing, and then it dies back down and back into the silence.
Very cool.
So I was wondering if you tell everybody in the audience just a little bit about your experience at Connecticut Summerfest 2020 Virtual Festival.
No, yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and especially this was right when COVID was starting to ramp up. So it was nice for me, especially to see that, because everyone was really not used to the whole online format and doing things online. So it was really nice to still have a very productive experience and get a lot out of like lectures and lessons, even though it was a vastly different experience than what it would have been had it been in person. I thought it was still really constructive for me.
Thank you. We're glad to hear it. And you know what? We were glad to have you. And without further ado, we're excited to premiere your new work that was composed for Connecticut Summerfest 2020, Ripples in the Silence.
Congratulations, Andrew. That was, as one of our viewers in the YouTube chat said, so sublime. Up next, we are going to premiere a piece by festival composer Zachary Detrick, which is a piece for clarinet, saxophone, and percussion. And the percussion part is key. I think y'all hear why soon. Zachary provided us with a really great and helpful video introduction talking about his piece, his process, and a little bit about his experiences at Connecticut Summerfest 2020. Zachary will also be available to answer any questions that you may have about his piece in the Zoom lobby after, and also in the chat on YouTube. So thank you so much, and over to Zachary.
Hi, I'm Zachary Detrick, currently located in New York City, and I'm a senior composition major at the Juilliard School. This is my piece Mater Natura Pro Nobis Erat for soprano saxophone, E-flat clarinet, doubling bass clarinet, and percussion. I started working on this piece as soon as the lockdown started. When trying to process this thing that was happening, my brain came up with this image that the pandemic was somehow a result of human injustices against Mother Nature, against the planet. And with the busy pace of our lives grinding to a halt, pollution would decrease and that the planet would somehow have a chance to start to heal itself. This imagery was fueled by the great Netflix show, The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, which I was watching at the time, in which the character Mother Agra acts as a caretaker to this peaceful and thriving planet until the ecosystem is corrupted by the greed of the characters called the Skeksis. The title Mater Natura Pro Nobis Erat is Latin for Mother Nature is praying for us, and I imagine Mother Nature as a caring figure, concerned and distressed that this coronavirus has happened, but also hoping that we'll learn from our mistakes. In the beginning of the piece, the clarinet and the saxophone chirp away. They have these high chirping sounds, and I wanted to conjure a lively forest with small animals and birds. Also, the percussionist plays a log drum, and he plays frog guiros, which are wooden frogs with carved notches in them, and these contribute to the forest ambience as well. There is a Renaissance-inspired chorale that appears throughout the piece that contrasts with these lively forest sounds in that it's more timeless, it's more mournful, it's sort of ghostly and otherworldly. I love the sound of the crotales, and to me they almost sound like a clock chiming. So I wrote this part for the crotales, in which there are multiple pulses at once, almost like the different parts of a clock. The piece ends with the first four notes of the chorale echoing and disappearing, and I think of this chorale as almost like a prayer for our world. I have very happy memories of Connecticut Summerfest this summer. I'm a video game nerd, so it meant a lot to me to find out that Aaron was too, and at the same time that he was doing this, he was doing a presentation for the North American Video Game Music Conference. I set a challenge for myself by deciding that at all four of my composition lessons this festival, I was going to show them a composition that I had written for Rock Band 2 years ago, and their enthusiastic responses helped to encourage me to take this other outlet of my musical creativity more seriously. I love the fact that the 8 composers who participated this year had this special bond. We were almost like a band of misfits, and I think my fellow composer Stephany put it very well when she called us the Dream Team. So thank you very much for listening, and please enjoy my piece.
Congratulations, Zachary. Definitely a very evocative atmosphere. And of course, I'd be remiss not to give a shout out to our little froggy friends for helping make us possible. So next up, we have festival composer Thomas Little. Welcome, Thomas.
Hello.
Hey, Thomas.
So tell us where you're calling in from.
Calling in from the Watch City, Waltham, Massachusetts.
Very nice. And what's happening over there?
Brandeis University, where I am in my second year of my MFA in composition and theory.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit about your piece?
Sure. So my piece is called The Land God Forgot, and it takes its name from the poem of the same name by Robert William Service. He's sometimes known as the Bard of the Yukon. He got famous initially around the turn of the century, a little bit after that, off the back of some very early, darkly humorous ballads. So those of you who are familiar with him are probably familiar with The Cremation of Sam McGee or The Shooting of Dan McGrew. But for me, what's always struck me about his poetry is his penchant for like this really vivid imagery. Like you really feel like you're there in the wilderness or you're, in the gold rush. And there's something of a familial connection as well, because my first exposure to his poetry came through a bookmark-addled tome owned by my great-grandfather. But I really started studying more of his poetry actually after a family road trip in 2017. My parents and I went from North Carolina to Alaska and back over the course of 40 days. And,
Wow.
The imagery is vivid. You get a sense of being there, even if you're reading it. But if you've actually been to that part of the world, it hits different. And so this is my sixth setting of a poem by Service. And I always want to do something different for each piece. And I got the ability to write for soprano, guitar, and harp, which is a very unusual combination. So I was excited about that. The guitar and harp are, of course, very similar in terms of their timbres. They're plucked string instruments. But they have different strengths and weaknesses. Like they're really oddball instruments to write for in a lot of ways because they have different rules and things you can and can't do. Since their timbres can be similar, I decided that I would treat them as kind of one composite instrument while text is being sung. And when it's not, I tried to highlight some of the differences between them. But it was a really fun challenge to try to write for this.
Excellent. And while I have you here, can I ask you a little bit about your experience this summer at our virtual 2020 season?
Yeah, it was very exciting. And it was, I think it speaks a lot to your leadership and determination that it was able to actually happen in pretty much, we did everything that we were going to do if it had been in person. The only negative impact is that these premieres are happening now instead of in June. And that's not really something that could happen if you had a larger festival or if, just the number of composers that we're dealing with, or, if this were ones with like student composers and also, performers coming in, having a dedicated ensemble like this. You did a good job accidentally, perhaps, with the scope of this, but like you really did handle it quite well. And that speaks to your professionalism. Thank
you. We really appreciate it. And actually, what we've been telling people is, fall doesn't really start until September 20th or 21st. So theoretically, we're having some summer premieres here. We are true to the name Summerfest. We are not yet Connecticut Autumn Fest or Winterfest.
Hey,
so we're still somewhat
someplace
within bound given the situation. But absolutely, it was a pleasure to have you. And we're so excited to hear your piece, The Land God Forgot.
is fate.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for your work. And as somebody in the YouTube chat pointed out, so dark and beautiful and haunting. That combo of the harp and the guitar definitely got me as well. Not least to talk about your incredible vocalist. So, Aaron, I think now is an exciting time for the two of us because we get to talk to one of the co-artistic directors and percussionist of the International Contemporary Ensemble, Ross Karre. So we'd love to invite Ross on right now.
Hi there.
Hi, Ross. How are you this evening?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for joining us in your concert black, very
Of
true
course.
to the concert form. We love it. Well, first of all, we'd like to say another huge thank you. It has been so wonderful collaborating with the International Contemporary Ensemble this season with all three of these trios. And we'd love to ask you a little bit about your experiences with Connecticut Summerfest and working with our festival composers.
Yeah, well, likewise. I mean, this has been a fabulous collaboration. Not only because it's a fantastic festival with a lot of ambition and the spirit of creation abounds in every sort of corner and every rectangle of our Zoom windows, but also because it's so good at adapting and creating something in what would otherwise be a compromised space. This virtual festival was, I think, a total success, and I really enjoyed getting to know everyone in a different manner, but nevertheless still able to count this community as larger because of your festival.
Absolutely. And on a similar note, how would you say that Ice Ensemble and Connecticut Summerfest mission sort of align in this incredible and varied new music space?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that, at the spirit and the core of both of our organizations and so many organizations is the process of creation, the spark of creation between interpreters, composers, and people who do both in this entire ecosystem of music is definitely what keeps me going and keeps the community thriving, is the idea that we are a generative practice. This is a living practice, and we're focused on living composers from all over the spectrum of ages and nationality. And that was represented here not only in tonight's concert, but also in the concerts leading up to tonight on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week. It just shows that the spirit of creation is still alive in music. The spark of creativity is very much a part of our day-to-day in virtual space or in shared spaces. And I think that that's at the core of what both of our organizations are really committed to at every turn. And then furthermore, it's about expanding the how and the why of that so that we can really investigate and interrogate who is being left out, who do we need to center and bring to the foreground in some of these conversations and creative processes.
Absolutely.
So some of the things that happen during the festival during the daytime, normally when we have this festival all at one time, is that some of the composition faculty give seminars talking about their music, and we also bring in guest lecturers. And actually this year you gave a lecture about technology empowerment for composers. So I was wondering if you could tell our audiences just a little bit about that workshop.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the COVID pandemic and the resulting lockdowns and quarantines have brought to the fore is something that a lot of my colleagues and I have been, I don't know, we've been sort of reserved about for the last few years or the last decade of practice, of the fact that one extends their practice using digital tools. I think up until now, this was seen as a dedicated service that was provided by professionals in music technology. What I really enjoyed, if there's anything to enjoy over the last months of quarantine, it has been that everyone is reconsidering their practice through the digital, not only as a necessary tool, but as something that can expand and empower one's practice. That digital mediation isn't only a sort of necessary part of these quarantine communications with conference calls, but it's also a way to explore how your practice can integrate with moving image or communicate across great distances or speak to the history of media and television. So this is I think, an interesting time to talk about how to do that from a very nuts and bolts level, but also why this can gradually go from a service-based technical industry to something that is just everyone plays clarinet and technology. Everyone is a violinist with technology. That's what our music ecosystem is becoming, and I welcome it. I think it's really encouraging.
Absolutely. And I can say, as somebody who was getting to sit in on that workshop, it was so incredible because there are just so many different softwares and so many technologies that I was not aware of. And I think a bunch of our festival composers sort of left your workshop with so many ideas in their head. I remember you were talking about an app that you can just sync music or sound to different short videos that you can take. And just this idea of bringing in different dimensions to your work and not just being a composer, but bringing in those other types of technologies is really exciting. So thanks so much for doing that. And we are so happy to have you.
Of course. Yeah. Happy to be here.
Perfect.
Thanks so much. So I think we are going to move on to our next premiere of the evening. So thank you so much for joining us, Ross. And
of course.
Thanks again to you and the International Contemporary Ensemble.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful festival. Congrats, everybody, and congratulations to all the composers. I look forward to the rest of the concert.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So next up on tonight's program, we have festival composer Megan DiGeorgio. Welcome, Megan. Oh.
Hi, Megan.
Hello.
There you are. Where are you calling in from?
I'm in Hyattsville, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C.
Great. And what's going on out there?
Oh, you know, I mean, being near our nation's capital is always exciting.
Definitely, especially in these trying times. So I was hoping you could tell us just a little bit about the piece that you composed for Connecticut Summerfest.
Sure. So when I write music, it tends to the sort of idea behind the piece or the eventual title or whatever it becomes often happens kind of after the compositional process. So a lot of our composers we've heard from so far today had very like concrete, and that's awesome. It's great to have that in mind when listening to a piece. I can't offer quite that for you. I can just say what it kind of came to mean for me. Basically, the piece kind of fluidly blends, between some seemingly pretty disparate emotional characters, and I think what it came to mean for me was I think that we tend to try to put things in boxes a lot, and like here's this thing and that's how I feel about this, and here's this thing and that's how I feel about this, and I just that sometimes tends to break down, especially in a time like this when we're all sort of collectively going through a lot mentally and emotionally. So I think what the piece kind of started to evolve into was just this idea that we can feel a lot of things at once and kind of seamlessly go from one thing to another, and that it can be complicated, and that everything is not just one thing, that we can be hopeful while also sad, or vindicated while feeling angry, or like lots of. So that's kind of what it means to me, but it can mean whatever you hear it as also.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to hearing it. And before I let you go, I was hoping to ask you a little bit about your experience this summer at Connecticut Summerfest 2020.
Sure. I mean, it was great to work with these performers, of course, just, some of the, not only just super high level performers, but also just great people to work with. That's one of my favorite things just about festivals in general. This whole sort of category of thing is just the people that you get to meet, not only the faculty and presenters and that type of thing, but the other composers and the people you end up collaborating with. So I think that was just a really cool experience. It was so cool putting this piece together, also long distance. It's just, something that probably not many of us have done before. And that was a really cool experience seeing it come to life.
Definitely. And well, we really enjoyed getting to know you and meeting you and having you at our festival as well. And I'm sure the audience is at the edge of their seats now. So without further ado, I'm excited to present the premiere of your new work, And Now Encounter Trees.
Congratulations, Megan. And we forgot to mention that Megan is actually a string player herself. And it's so amazing when you see someone who plays the instrument writing for the instrument. We also had some really amazing comments in the chat about those crunchy opening seconds. So just wanted to point that out to the audience. Next up, we are premiering a work by composer Mike Zavorskas, who we would like to invite on now. Welcome, Mike.
Hello.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
We're good in our little boxes, I'm sure, on screen. And where are you calling us from this evening?
So I'm in Aberdeen, New Jersey.
Great. And you are in a school program, just finished a school program?
Yeah, I'm working on my PhD at Rutgers. So I'm done with my coursework. I'm just working on my dissertation now.
Wow, so exciting. Talking about pieces of Mike Zavorskas, your piece has a really excellent title. It is called A Ferocious Mumbling. Can you tell us a little bit about the title and maybe some of the things that inspired the piece?
Yeah, sure. So the title is from a poem by George Oppen called On Being Numerous. And so, as you've heard from my fellow composers, I think pretty much all of us were writing this at the beginning of, quarantine being a reality. And, I was going on a lot of walks around my neighborhood and kind of thinking about what the heck I was going to do. It was really difficult to get started on this. Since I've been working on my dissertation, this was kind of the first piece I'd written in a while. So I just kind of had two thoughts about it. One is that, everything is changing, the world is changing, I'm changing. So I felt like I wanted to try something new for myself. So usually I write very rhythmic music, and I wanted to get a little bit away from that. So this is something, actually, it's not the very first piece that I wrote, but one of the first pieces I wrote that used just clock time. There's no real meter. It's just very open. So there's a lot of chances for the performers to improvise. And the title itself, I was just finding it really hard to kind of express myself and what was going on and what I saw as the problems, and if I could figure out any solutions, what those would be. So the line right before the title is, "It is not easy to speak, a ferocious mumbling in public of rootless speech." I just thought it was very appropriate.
Wow, yeah, I'm gonna have to go read that entire poem now myself. That's really incredible.
Yeah,
and also an incredible way to be able to name your piece with such cool poetry, sort of as the concept. So the other thing we'd love to ask you is if you have a sort of favorite moment from Connecticut Summerfest or something that sticks out in your mind from when you attended back in June.
Yeah, well, it was actually really great. Working on my dissertations kind of can be a very lonely experience. So it was nice to be able to get to know 9 new composers, and listening to everyone got some time to talk about their work, and just getting to see what other people were thinking about was great. And having those really nice long lessons was with the festival composers was also really good. And now I follow Matt Sargent on Twitter and get a lot of music-based puns all the time. So it's great.
That's what Twitter's for, those good music-based puns.
Yep.
Well, thanks so much for giving us a window into your piece, Mike. And without further ado, here we would like to premiere your work, A Ferocious Mumbling.
Congratulations, Mike, on your piece. I'm a clarinetist and a saxophonist myself, so it was really interesting for me to hear the way that you sort of seamlessly cross-faded between tone production and then breathiness and key clicks. And it's very idiomatically written for those instruments to be able to do so, which not a lot of people are aware of. So I thought it was very, very intuitive in that way. A ferocious mumbling, so to speak. So next up on our program, we have festival composer Stephany Svorinic. Welcome, Stephany.
Hello, nice to be here. Thanks for all of the work you do.
Of course, well, we're happy to have you. And where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Somerville, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Boston.
And what's going on out there?
Well, right across the street from my apartment is Tufts University, where I just started a master's in composition.
Fantastic. And so we actually had a Tufts connection this summer at our festival. One of our guest lecturers was Dr. Stephen Pennington, who gave a lecture about protest music and ways that composers can conceptualize that. And I know that you had heard about him previously. We're so excited to see him at the festival. So I was wondering if you could talk about your experience at the festival, both during his lecture and just in general.
Well, when I heard his lecture, I said, man of my own heart. You know, I really did. I resonated very much with what he was talking about. And I really look forward to working with him when he gets back to Tufts, because he's doing something else on leave right now. But going back to the festival, it was a marvelous experience. I really, really, really did enjoy myself. I don't like to have to wake up early and be any place before 10 a.m., really before 3 p.m. if I can avoid it. So, it was just wonderful to be able to wake up at like 9:50 and log into Zoom and have all these wonderful creative people right there to interact with. So I felt like it was the best of both worlds, you know? But that aside, it was also a really friendly culture, and I just felt like everybody was in it together, and there was a lot of quirky humor going on, and cocktail hour was always fantastic. And also, of course, the lectures that we had really gave some insightful information to, you know, further our cause as composers. So yeah, it was really delightful. And I would even say, honestly, it was the best summer festival I have ever been to. For me.
Oh,
yes, that's
well, we're glad. Thank you so much. So before this premiere happens, I was hoping you could tell our audience a little bit about your piece.
Well, thank you. So the piece is called A Cloak, a Cluster, a Casing, and it's for harp, guitar, and flute. And of course, I wrote it during quarantine, but I was going through a separation from my marriage at the time. And we had been together for 7 years. And of course, quarantine is hard enough, but then to have that happen, it was like, I don't even know how to deal with like everything. So, and I knew I had to write this piece, and I knew it was going to be super important. And I was like, oh my goodness, how do I do this? So I started, like, the way I got the idea was basically because I was going through such a heavy time emotionally. I couldn't even tackle music in that moment. So I chose a different medium first, which was just using acrylic paints. And I tried to just get all of my emotions out into this painting. And I had all these colors swirling around, and then I mixed them all together, and it just created this black morass. And
wow.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not a painter, but you know, I tried. And I was like, that is so totally me right now. It's like all these colors under the surface of this darkness. And then I penciled in lattice work, and I started thinking about, well, how can I make this emotional expression into a piece of music that is also true to what I'm going through. And I realized, I should say, that the flute became basically the spirit, which is the darkness that is covering the lattice work, which is the harp. And I don't know if you can see this on camera, but there's all these little bumps inside, and those are chicory clusters that I like impounded into the paint. And that represents the guitar, which are these bursts of soul that come through the blackness. And so that's what my piece is about.
That was
Excellent.
so helpful. Thanks for showing us the painting too.
Namaste.
And of course, as a reminder to our audience, if you want to see the painting again or ask any questions of Stephany or any of the composers, to join us for the Zoom lobby that's going to be in the chat after the performance. So without further ado, oh, go ahead.
I have one more thing to add, and I wrote it
Absolutely.
down. I did not want to forget. Through this whole process, I always go to the Spanish language when I need help because that's my first language. And I got these snippets of poetry that said, "Dentro de ella se recogerá," and that translates to "within her, be collected." And I just randomly found this during my process, and it spoke to me on a deep level, like, you know, I'm going to get through this. I am going to go within and get through this. And so what I did for the piece was I took all the phonemes of the Spanish and I took out all of the vowels, and then I used just the clusters of consonants for the end of the piece. And you're going to hear the flutist with air sounds also articulating these phonemes of consonants that sound very much like an incantation. And that was my incantation to myself to rise from the situation of containment and quarantine. And that's the piece.
Amazing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you interrupted me so that we got to hear about that, because I think it'll be helpful for our listeners to know as we go forward into the premiere of A Cloak, a Cluster, a Casing.
Congratulations, Stephany. And I'm so glad we got to see that painting too. It was so fun hearing all those, especially the rich bass notes of the harp, and getting to sort of decide in my own mind what parts of the painting we were on and which instruments were which lines. So, and don't forget as well, viewers, if you'd like to meet the composers and ask them any questions you have, maybe see Stephany's painting, do please stick around and come to our Zoom lobby at the end of the concert, which is after this last piece. Last but not least, we would love to welcome on festival composer Dale Osterman. Dale, how are you this evening?
Hey guys, I'm doing good. How are you?
We're well, and we're really excited for your piece. Dale, it's worth mentioning, I think, too, that not only were you a festival composer this year, but also at last year's Connecticut Summerfest.
Yeah.
Who did you write for last year? And can you also give us a little window into your piece this year?
Yeah, so last year I wrote for Duo Alterity, flute and guitar duet. And this year I wrote for saxophone, clarinet, and electronics. That's tenor sax, B-flat, clarinet, and then electronics. The electronics are made up of 3 components. There's a little bell chime sound that happens to like kind of signal certain events, just made using some tweaks to presets in Logic's Alchemy synth. There's a harsh noise component that was made using an FM synthesizer patch in Logic that I kind of made myself. And then the final and probably the most important aspect of the piece is a chatter section, which is just recordings of me speaking texts cut up and assembled using chance procedures. And those tie most directly to the title of the piece, which is Journal. I have, over the course of the past like 10 years or so, on and off, not entirely consistently, have been a journaler. I do a lot of journal work, whether it be just like writing practice, or like this is how my day went, or morning pages, or stream of consciousness writing, just like any kind of journaling. I've done a lot of that over the past 10 years or so, since I was in high school. And during quarantine, I learned about this little trick for brainstorming like songwriting ideas, where you set a timer for 2 to 3 minutes and you just write down as many terms, phrases, words that you can think of, and then you highlight the words that you like the most at the end of the time period, and then you do another session where you kind of write off of those words. So you kind of like start with a very vague jumble of nonsense, and then you kind of get into a more specific jumble of nonsense. So I took all of those that I'd done over the course of like maybe 2 months during quarantine, and recorded myself saying all of the phrases that I had highlighted, and then cut them up, rearranged them, assembled them. And so this piece kind of ends up being about creativity, I guess, in a way, because it's about like kind of structuring this very unstructured, free way of approaching creative work, whether it's music or words. And actually, I'm planning on turning this into a series of pieces where I do the same thing and maybe like expand that into a greater idea using other art forms or other kind of like free associative ways of making things.
Yeah, that's incredible. And thanks for sort of giving us a look into the process that put this piece together. I'm sure there are some composers in the virtual audience right now who are looking to maybe steal some of those processes and those ideas. They sound really exciting, and I'm excited to hear the piece. But before we let you go, we'd love to ask if you have any sort of favorite moments or anecdotes from Connecticut Summerfest 2020 you'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, everything was fantastic. Like all of the presentations, like I can't think of a miss. Like they were all fantastic. Dr. Pennington's presentation on protest music was like very eye-opening. All of the guest composers, everything was just really fantastic. But I really just want to like kind of shout out to just the sense of like camaraderie that and welcomingness. I know I've said that in like testimonials for Summerfest, I think this year and last year. Just like the sense of the like welcoming sense that you guys bring is so fantastic. And you managed to do it again online in this completely virtual environment, and like it did not degrade at all. And I'm just like, it was fantastic. I loved it. Thank you guys.
Amazing. Thank you, Dale. And thank you so much too for joining us for a second year. It was so amazing to have you. And we are so, so glad that changing to a virtual festival felt like it kept all of that sort of community and companionship that we're always looking to build into the festival. And part of the reason that we like to keep it small like this, I mean, this year's 8 composers, kind of like Zachary said earlier in the evening, like feels like its own little special cohort, and that's always a great feeling. So thank you so much. Thank you also for telling us about your piece. And without further ado, our final piece of the evening, Journal.
Waves beckon or break, ocean of stardust, catastrophe 2020. April 19th, 2020. The skies filled with April 14th, 2020. Broke the fleeting. Drifted away on the wind. The smell is taking up eternity. Vampiric capital April 2020. The sky spills onto the ground. Grounding light sparks trees, asks me to stay. Rose for reinventing best of fortune. Iron April 14th. Ties that bind the circle. April God is God is escape. It's my sky. Pen, I'm like a hammer debt to be paid. Love does not speak like mountain sound and water caskets make water battery overloading May 4th, 2020. Stop looking at the shot of air water lost my footing. Station apology answer to no elements even deaths for sale. See no disgrace. Ties that bind brave crying. Those eyes are not hereditary specks of light, little trees got nothing left to say. Based on thought drafted in my sleep, tongues will the heel of the oligarch.
Yay! Congratulations to Dale on his piece, Journal. As some of the audience members said, and I too believe, really beautiful and also a little bit ASMR. Thank you so much all for watching tonight.
Absolutely, and I'm going to echo that thank you and say we're really so grateful for your support, and you've really helped us to make our 2020 season possible as we successfully adapted to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. We're very proud to be furthering our mission of facilitating the creation of new music, and we're so proud to be supporting the work of the talented composers that you heard tonight.
Just a reminder too, to stick around and meet the composers, say hi to us, ask any questions you may have at our Zoom lobby. And the link for that will be available in the chat, whether you're on our YouTube or our Facebook. So just look for that. The URL is also bit.ly/CTSF lobby if you'd like to just type that into your browser. And finally, we'd like to give a huge thank you to the International Contemporary Ensemble, performers of which you were seeing all this evening. They were our 2020 ensemble in residence, and it was so great to be able to collaborate with them. We'd also like to thank Kinsman Sound Studio, who supplied tonight's live stream and has worked with us every year since our inception back in 2016. So huge thank you to Kinsman, definitely check them out. And also in terms of making the stream possible, thank you to all of our staff that are working virtually behind the scenes to make everything you're seeing possible. So huge thank you to our staff now and always. And this evening would not be possible without the work of our incredible, intrepid festival composers. Thank you so much to all of you for your work, your camaraderie, and it has been so wonderful getting to know all of you, and can't wait to talk more about all of your works in the Zoom lobby right after this. Finally, a huge thank you to our viewers tonight and to our supporters of Connecticut Summerfest. This was our 5th anniversary season, which was a huge landmark to us. Aaron and I met back in school at the Hart School, and it's been a long journey coming here, and we're so, so glad to still be around and be planning our 6th season coming in 2021 in June. If you'd like to learn more or consider making a donation, please go to our website at ctsummerfest.org. And finally, we'll see you in the Zoom lobby. So check out those links in the chat wherever you are, and please have a good evening.